Species. Unite.
I saw an opening to approach him with an idea to take over the facility, have him turn in his USDA license so he couldn't test on animals again. I said, we'll buy the property, not the business. You leave all your animals, give us custody of the animals, et cetera, et cetera. I thought I would be laughed off the phone, but surprisingly, I wasn't.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Novogratz. This is Species Unite. We'd like to thank Lush for sponsoring today's episode. Lush advocates for people, animals, and the planet. Through their ethically sourced ingredients and their grants program, they give back locally and around the world. This conversation was done as a live interview a few weeks ago. It's with me and Shannon Keith. Shannon is the president and founder of the Beagle Freedom Project, and I invited her on to discuss the shutdown of a massive dog and cat testing laboratory in Nowata, Oklahoma. Not only did the Beagle Freedom Project and Shannon shut down this laboratory, but they rescued all of the dogs and cats that were being tested on there, and they took over the laboratory and are in the process of transforming it into a 30-acre sanctuary called Freedom Fields. Shannon and I talk about her work in rescue and adopting out these animals that were used in testing, and also her bigger goal to end animal testing altogether. Hi, Shannon. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm really good. It's good to see you. It's been a long time. Shannon has been on Species Unite before. She was on in the very early days. I went to your house in LA. Do you remember this?
Yes.
No, I mean, this is like 5 or 6 years ago. I met your dogs, and that's how we met. And it was awesome. But we haven't talked about what's happening at Beagle Freedom Project since then. And a lot has happened. So the main point of this live interview is to talk about one of Beagle Freedom Project's enormous successes that happened this year called Freedom Fields. But before we get there, for people who don't know about Beagle Freedom Project, Shannon, will you give us some background, tell us what it is, and why you started it?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on. It's good to be here and to see you. Yeah. So I started Beagle Freedom Project in late 2010. And the premises was it was a result of saving 2 beagles from a laboratory. There was just word going around, and I already had a nonprofit called ARMY, Animal Rescue, Media, and Education, which merged into Beagle Freedom Project. And that's kind of how I heard about these beagles. They were in a laboratory in Northern California, and a woman who worked there was desperately trying to save their lives, to get them out before the Christmas break, because the laboratory was not going to pay anybody holiday or overtime or anything to be there. And so she was reaching out, and we got word of it. And I said, of course we'll take them. Oh my goodness. Like I never really thought I would have the opportunity to save animals in a laboratory before. And so we hurried up there. We drove to Northern California, rescued these 2 beagles, and they changed my life. In my head, all my visions were, when we see these beagles, it's going to be their first time out of a cage ever. They're going to be so happy. The second we open their cages, they're just going to run and be free and be so happy. Unfortunately, that was not the case. We brought them out of the car from the person who worked at the lab. We brought them into a backyard, opened their crates, and they would not leave their crates. They were so frightened of the outside world. It took them at least 20 minutes, the first beagle. His name was Bigsby, and he finally took his first step on the grass, very gingerly, touched the grass, lifted his paw back up because he didn't know what that feeling was. He was scared. And then he walked over to the other beagle and touched his nose. We named him Freedom, and he came out of his crate. And that's when they started slowly becoming dogs and realizing we're free. And what is this sunshine and this grass and all these smells? I mean, they're hounds. They go by their scent. So their rescue literally started Beagle Freedom Project.
And for people who don't know, because even though I feel like people know a lot more now, especially after the big Envigo thing that got so much press a couple of years ago, where 4,000 beagles were rescued. But I still think a lot of people don't really know two things. One, how much we still test on animals across the board. And two, the fact that we test on so many dogs. Will you just talk about that a little bit? Like, and how much of that is still happening now in 2024?
Sure. And you're so right, because most people still have no idea. And that's because the animal testing industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They have all the resources that they can to defraud the public. And that's exactly what they do. And they hide anything and everything. When you do research on certain companies who do animal testing, they will make sure to exclude the fact that they test on dogs and cats, even though they do. They'll talk about rats, mice, and rabbits who they think people don't care about. Obviously, we do. But dogs and cats are really, people can relate to the most because they usually share their homes with those animals more than the other animals. And so they do a great job at hiding what they do. Even people who work for some of these companies don't even know what they do. You'd be surprised at how many calls we get on our whistleblower hotline. And by the way, if anyone's listening who works in the lab and wants to give us information, we have a whistleblower hotline on our website. Please contact us and let us know what's going on. But we get a lot of information there from people who work at labs who didn't know for years they were doing this horrible testing on dogs. And then one day they saw it happen and they couldn't believe it. They were mortified and come and tell us about it so we can do some research. And so at any given moment in the United States, there's at least 65,000 dogs in animal testing laboratories and about 30,000 cats. So that's a lot of animals every single day being tested on and tortured for things that aren't necessary. And now, with the passage of the FDA Modernization Act, not even required to be tested by federal law.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit too, the FDA Modernization Act. But before we do, let's go back to your story. So you rescue these two beagles and you're like, okay, we got to do something about this, especially when you met the woman who gave you the info and said, come get them, that if she existed, there must be others like her. Is that what spurred you on?
Exactly. Yeah. I already knew about animal testing, but it's different to know about it and then to actually meet the survivors. When you meet the survivors face to face and you look into their eyes, it does something different to you. You look at the tattoos in their ears. Most people don't know, but especially in the United States, these dogs and cats are tattooed in their ear with the federal ID number, having no voice, no identity, and being enslaved.
And living in small cages, being tested on, never touching another animal, all of it, right? And going insane.
Exactly. And this woman knew a lot. So what was interesting was on our drive home, we noticed the beagles were kind of like falling over. They didn't have a lot of muscle tone. One of them kept giving us his paw, which we thought was really cute. We got on the phone with her and she was just checking in to see how the drive was going. And she said, hey, are they giving you their paw? And I said, yeah, they're giving us their paw all the time. It's super cute. And she said, no, it is not cute at all. The lab trained them to give their paw for blood. So that is why they're giving their paw. And on one of them, his veins had been used so much. They were collapsed.
For Beagle Freedom Project, was the whole point of it, especially in the beginning, to just see how many more animals you could get out of these places and rescue them and rehome them?
Yes, but the ultimate goal, of course, was to end animal testing.
Yeah, of course.
It's always been my goal, but I knew, we know that doesn't happen overnight. And so, yes, I thought, okay, you're going to reach out to several more laboratories, do the research, which you can easily do on the USDA's website, find out where these animals are, reaching out to these facilities and asking if they will release their animals to us. And I call it Beagle Freedom Project simply because beagles are the #1 breed of dog used in testing, but we rescue all animals from laboratories. I mean, we've rescued dogs of all breeds, cats, horses, guinea pigs, pigs, sheep, goats, alpaca, ferrets, you name it, we've rescued them. And you name it, the animal testing industry tests on them. So, people wouldn't believe like alpacas being tested on. Yes, they're tested on. My goal was reach out to all these facilities. Yes, see who we can get out. They would be our ambassadors for the cause because, like I said, it was meeting them face to face that really did something to me. And I noticed did something to other people as well. It really motivates you because you see the pain in their eyes and you see the shell, they look through you because they're scared. And just seeing them make these breakthroughs was so heartwarming to finally be able to trust people, to finally make eye contact where it wasn't looking through someone, but looking at them and with them, to finally playing with a toy, taking a treat, sleeping in a bed, cuddling with somebody. These were things that were so amazing and still are so amazing. And so what happened is when we started introducing our legislation, that's when the animal testing industry became our enemy. Not that they weren't before, but I should say on their end, we became public enemy number one to them. And they really hated Beagle Freedom Project and did anything they could do to not release animals to us.
Because you were allowing the public to know that all this existed in the first place.
Exactly. I was even told by somebody at a lab, we just don't like you letting people know that dogs and cats are being tested on. And I knew that was the case, but hearing it from someone in a lab floored me.
Like you said at the beginning, people really don't know. And in fact, when I went to one of your benefits years ago, and there were all sorts of animals there and all had been rescued from labs, and there was a pig and there was a goat, and the reality of oh my God, all of these guys came out of labs. Even though I knew, I still didn't know until I saw the animals, face to face. It just didn't hit me in the same way until I saw them.
Exactly.
It is so hard to process that these guys just have such insanely miserable lives. Nobody, except for people like you, are fighting for them because no one even really knows this is happening. And so it makes your work all the more important, obviously. You have rescued many animals in the past 15 years, and you've shut down labs. This is Freedom Fields is the first time you've rescued the animals, you've shut down the lab, and you took it over, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's what I really want to talk about today, because it's like a movie, this story. It's such what we need to focus on, talk about successes, right? There's got to be some joy when you think about how much darkness in these worlds. And I think the more joy people know about, the more inspired people will be to do more to help too. That there is possibility.
Yes.
So take us from the very beginning, how you even found out about this place and what it was when you first found out about it.
Yes, definitely. So what happened was every single year we send out letters to every laboratory and laboratory breeder in the United States saying, please work with us, release your animals to us. We want to rehome them, this, that, and the other, even though, we might differ on our beliefs, we can all agree that these animals deserve a second chance at life. So one of the facilities that got letters every year was called Reiner and Associates Animal Health Innovations in Nowata, Oklahoma, and never heard back from them. And one day I was walking around and I get a phone call, unknown call, and it's the owner of this facility. And he said, I got your letter. I've actually been getting your letters for years, but they've just been sitting on my desk. I've been ignoring them. And he said, I actually would like to release some of our dogs to you. And I was like, great, this is fabulous, wonderful. Our letter worked. I think at the time, this was a few years ago, he had 25 dogs, and they were all very old. They had been there their whole lives, and they were old beagles. And so we arranged to drive out to Oklahoma from Los Angeles, pick up all these dogs, and then bring them back and bring them into homes. Some of our employees went there and I didn't go at the time, told me about the place, which was in the middle of nowhere in Nowata, a sprawling 30-acre facility, but with just a couple of buildings that were kennels. And then there was this large outdoor area that was just igloo after igloo after igloo in these pens, these outdoor pens where the dogs were being kept. So typically when they weren't being tested on, they were kept outside in these pens 24/7. So we're talking in 110-degree weather and during thunderstorms, rainstorms, snowstorms, they're outside. Only shelter being this tiny little igloo that they also had to share with other dogs in their pen. Inside was, what you would imagine a laboratory facility would look like a dirty kennel, dog after dog, just desperate for attention and wanting love. And then there was another room full of cats that were being tested on as well. Also in cages, they were in cages together. And so I heard about it and I thought, okay, let's just keep the relationship going, and we did a few rescues with him in this facility. And I just saw an opening. I saw an opening to approach him with an idea to take over the facility, have him turn in his USDA license so he couldn't test on animals again. I said, we'll buy the property, not the business. You leave all your animals, give us custody of the animals, et cetera, et cetera. I thought I would be laughed off the phone, but surprisingly, I wasn't. That has a lot to do with the animal testing industry as a whole right now because they're losing money, which is fabulous. And he wasn't getting a lot of contracts. And I think he was just like, okay, I'm done, basically. So it worked out. I do applaud him for working this out with me. And that was the case. I wrote up a contract. He left all of his animals to us. He turned in his USDA license. In February, we took over and took custody of all the animals, and the land was ours. And since then, we have been rehabilitating these animals, finding them homes, and taking in more from other labs and renovating this place to become an enormous, beautiful animal rehabilitation center, adoption center, and sanctuary.
It's an incredible story. It really is. What were the animals like? Just completely traumatized, like kind of everywhere else?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, when we did our first rescue with him, I was surprised at what horrible physical shape they were in. Usually laboratories won't release animals that look bad. Have any kind of scarring, stitches, any kind of physical injuries because they know that looks bad, right? But these dogs and cats were all and have been in really, really bad shape, obviously mentally, but also physically. Just everything from having seizures from the toxins being put in them, lots of them having seizures, and to just skin lesions and burns, things like that. Nails completely overgrown, cherry eyes. The amount of veterinary care these dogs and cats have needed has been exponential. It's been insane. Also, they were breeding these dogs. And so they claim they weren't like intentionally breeding them, but what was happening was they were just digging into each other's pens because none of them were spayed or neutered. We ended up with lots of, when we took over, pregnant dogs who were way, full term, and lots of newborn puppies.
To adopt these kind of dogs out, do a lot not get adopted out? Are they too traumatized, or like, how does that go?
We took over with the puppies and everything, and it ended up being like over 200 dogs, and then there were like over 50 cats or so. So our team has been amazing. I applaud the Beagle Freedom Project team so much. We have such a great group of people. In fact, one of our employees who lived in Los Angeles actually moved to the facility to live there full time. And she's been awesome. And her team we call them our rescue team, our adoptions team, as well as everybody working together, has been able now to adopt out, I would say it's like over 150 of those dogs. So we hardly have any dogs left that were from the original place, as well as lots of cats.
So the space will take more dogs from labs.
Oh, yeah. So what we're working on right now is the kennels that they were kept in, these buildings, as one might imagine, smell so horrifically bad that, you can hardly walk in there and stay in there. Your eyes tear up. It's just, the stench is insane. And we've had, lots of people out there, contractors saying, no matter what you do, digging it up, replacing it, we can't guarantee the smell will go away. So what we're working on right now is building an entirely new state-of-the-art indoor-outdoor facility for these dogs and for new dogs who come in. And it's going to be wonderful. It's not going to be a kennel. I call it like it's our dog suite. And this will be like a luxury facility for these animals. And it's going to look like a home. There's going to be rooms, not kennels. They're going to be able to go indoor and outdoor as they please. But that takes a lot. It's a lot of money to make this. And it's going to take several months to build. In the meantime, we have some temporary facilities coming. We have one that we just purchased. Actually, it's a manufactured home coming that we're making into our senior center because many of the dogs are very old. And they don't want to be around those youngins, who are annoying them. And they just want to chill and get massages all day and go on a water treadmill. And that's what we're doing. So we're building that right now as well for them.
Well, and all the years they spent in testing, right?
Exactly. Like, they're just checked out. And so we're looking forward. That'll be done in a few weeks. That'll be amazing for them to go into. Once our new building is done, then we can start taking in a lot of new dogs from different animal testing facilities. We also changed the cat kennel room entirely. Now it's like a huge cat suite. We made an enclosed catio so the cats could see the outdoors for the first time. The cats had never been outside. And they had no ventilation whatsoever, never seen the sun, nothing. And so when we built this catio, it was like heaven on earth for them. And many of them just never leave. They go outside and they don't leave. They just roll in the sun. They love it out there. And then we're also building a cat cafe. So people can come and hang and have some coffee and sit with the cats and hopefully adopt them because they're a little bit harder to adopt than our dogs.
Yeah, I bet. I guess the general public then will be able to come and see all the animals and hopefully take animals home. For people who don't know, when was this, Shannon? When the Envigo thing happened and 4,000 beagles that were in Virginia, the breeding facility got shut down. But it was all over the press because of the number. It was 4,000 dogs.
Right.
Even though this is happening all over the country, this was a really big deal that it got shut down.
Right.
Couple questions. Did you guys end up with Envigo beagles as well?
Yes.
I figured. And do you think, even though we keep saying nobody knows about this, that brought some attention to the fact that we test on dogs to the general public? But did it do anything to slow it down or I don't know, have the general public resist, fight against it?
That's such an important question. And I'm so glad that you asked that. Kind of gives me the chills and makes me want to cry a little bit because yes, during that time, everyone knew Envigo. It was all over the news and everywhere. And yes, it was great for education. Oh my gosh, there's this horrible place. But I almost feel like people thought, okay, that was it and it's over. It's not happening now anywhere else or to anybody else. What a lot of people, even within our realm, don't know is that Envigo still exists. And it's owned by Innovative, and there are several other labs that they have with beagles in them that we're working on now. So that wasn't the end of Envigo. I mean, it was just the end of one facility. And that's great. And it's amazing for a lot of those dogs. And it was great for education, but slowing the animal testing down because of it, no. That's why having the ultimate goal of doing like legislative outreach work and, actually getting in there and changing laws is so critical. But what's good is to have obviously the public support behind us. So yes, Envigo educated a lot of people, educated politicians. The politicians there who, they enacted our signature legislation, our Beagle Freedom legislation there, which is great, and so it gets the sympathy of people who are change makers behind policy change. But the really important thing is to make that policy change happen, or this is going to keep going on.
So for people who don't know, talk about the Beagle Freedom Act.
what was happening was when I first started Beagle Freedom Project, like we were talking about, it was rescuing a lot of animals from laboratories. So my plan was, okay, once I feel like we've had a couple of years under our belt or a few years with a lot of, attention, we have a lot of animals, people know about this, then we're going to start changing laws. And that's what we started to do. So in 2014, our first state was Minnesota and then California. And then from there, we enacted what's called the Beagle Freedom Project Bill. And what that essentially is a very vanilla bill, because that was our only way to get our foot in the door in the beginning. So basically what it said was, if you're a facility that tests on dogs and cats, when the testing is over, you are mandated to release those animals to give them a second chance at life to, 501c3 charity like Beagle Freedom Project, and any other type of facility like that, like a rescue facility. You wouldn't believe how hard that was to pass. Because in our eyes, we thought, okay, obviously we knew we'd have some opposition from the testing industry, from these facilities, from higher education facilities that have animals. But we thought they're going to look terrible opposing this because we're not trying to interfere with with the testing, right?
Right.
We're not saying end your testing. We're not saying we're going to regulate your testing. All we're saying is when it's done, release them. Well, they looked terrible because they opposed this over and over and over again. It took us 2 sessions in California to pass it.
In California. How many states has it passed in?
13 states now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, but obviously it should be 50. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, yeah. So collectively, we've tried to make this a federal law, and it's been really, really difficult to do, unfortunately. Really difficult to do. And you would think it would be easy, but it's not.
And why is it so hard? What's the biggest resistance? Like from who, aside from the testing industry?
Well, it is the testing industry and their lobbyists because they lie.
Right.
They lie about everything. So each time, each different state, they come up with something new. In California, it was fascinating. The first year in California, our big opponents were like UC Davis and, higher education facilities who enslave and test on these animals and, obviously don't have to. And so their whole argument that first session was these animals are bred to live in laboratories. These dogs and cats are bred to live like this and be tested on. And so they are not appropriate for homes. So they must be euthanized at the end of the testing, even if they're totally healthy. It's not anything that would, impair their quality of life in the future, et cetera. And so that first year, we had in our audience, we had some of our beagles, we had lots of our families who have adopted. Our argument was, we have 150 examples right now just in your area alone of people who adopted these dogs. And of course, they're suitable for homes. Like, how can you say this? And we lost. Second session, we come around, same people are opposing us. And now they have photos of people with dogs from their facility who they adopted these dogs to. They're like, well, we don't need them because we don't need this law because we have our in-house, our own in-house adoptions. And, we don't want to be legislated. We just want to be able to do this on our own. And I stood up and I was like, excuse me, last year you said they weren't suitable for homes. And now all of a sudden they are, and you're adopting them. Come on.
Yeah.
And so we won. Thank God.
Are you still trying to pass this in the other 37 states, or you're just federal now?
We put a pause on that for a minute, but other people have been great. Other people can go ahead and initiate this law in their state, and we will help them. So anybody listening here, you can go to our website, bfp.org, and click on the tab at the top for our laws and look at all the states we've passed in. If we haven't passed in your state, you can find an animal-friendly legislator and ask that they introduce it because it's already basically written for them. Yeah. And contact us. We will help you. I'll send you promotional materials, leaflets, everything to get it going. We have a great story about Oregon. We have a BFP Kids program. And there was a class who I did a Zoom with and told them about our bill. And they said, we want to do this in Oregon. We hadn't passed in Oregon yet. Well, they found their animal friendly legislator. They did all the work, almost all themselves, and we passed. These kids did it with their teacher.
What a crazy success. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the FDA Modernization Act. Why don't you say what it is?
So the animal testing industry's defense to us their comments has always been like, well, this is required by law, so we have to do it. We have to test on these animals for X, Y, and Z because the FDA requires it. Well, what's so huge about the FDA Modernization Act passing is that finally the FDA said for certain types of drugs and things like that on the market that were previously required to be tested on animals, they do not need to be tested on animals anymore. Period. And that made me so happy, but also really, really angry. Okay, FDA, this is what we've been saying for decades. And now all of a sudden you just say like, yeah, animals don't need to be tested on. Well, we knew that. Not only did we know that, but those drugs that were tested on animals ended up hurting and killing people. We don't have the same systems they have. But anyway, thank God it passed. But here's the thing, is that it gives companies an option. So you're not required to not test. You know what I'm saying? So a company can choose to still test if they want to, but they don't have to.
So basically you're saying you can keep doing things the way you've been doing and spending the amount of money you've been spending, or uproot your whole system, change it. You're going to have to spend a little more money to change it, but you won't be testing on animals anymore, but you're going to be spending more money, right? And so no one wants to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And they're all part of this, old crew who they just don't like to make changes. Yes, there would be some money in the beginning, saving money later. But they're used to the way things are. They don't want to change anything. And it's ridiculous because the industry knows that society is against what they do. The majority of society is against testing on animals. And especially now that the government has said it, now more people are like, oh, well, okay, if the FDA says it's not required, well then, yeah, okay, we don't believe in testing anymore. It's right there. So now we know the bad players. So people should really go after those bad players. And a good way, we made a really easy way to do that for everybody. And we have an app. It's free. It's called Cruelty Cutter. Go to your app store, download it, sign in. It's free. And it's essentially a cruelty-free shopping app. All you have to do is scan the barcode on any item. It will tell you instantly if it tests on animals or not. If it does, and if it doesn't, but I use it more when it does, you can share those results. You can send a message or email letter to the company. These are pre-written for you. You just press buttons. You click boycott to boycott that company. And the app also gives you cruelty-free options for what you wanted to buy to make it really easy for you. That's the way you see your bad players. So you find out, okay, these are some of the companies, and this is just actually for some products and things like that. It's not even getting into the drug market. But those are just the easy bad players that you can go after.
I mean, people can't really go up against the drug market. They just have to go up against the government, right? I was going to ask you about your whistleblower hotline too. Do you get many whistleblowers calling in?
I wouldn't say we get a lot of them. No, I wish we got more, maybe one every couple of months or something like that. People are very scared. And that's what this testing industry does too. They make people sign all kinds of things up the wazoo, and then they scare them. Many people are scared for their lives. They tell us how serious their facility is and how they think that if anything is released, that they gave us any information, that they will be personally targeted and their family will be targeted in a very dangerous way. And I wouldn't put that past this industry. I've gotten death threats over and over and over again. So I know it's from them. I know who they are. It scared me a little bit at first. Now it's just kind of laughable.
Right.
But that's what they do. They're bullies. They're vicious, mean bullies. But what do you expect from people who torture animals?
I would think too, with the whistleblower thing, yes, people see horrible things happening, but the nature of the business is pretty horrible. So to be able to determine, like, well, we torture them, is this something I could, do you know what I mean? Or is this just like normal days work, or like to know what even to whistleblow about?
Yeah, exactly. That's a really, really good point. I'm glad you brought up because
Yeah.
yes, the nature of it is basically torture. So what part of it are they going to call in about? If they voluntarily got a job there and they're working there and everything else. I think that some people have just had it, right? Some people have worked there for so long. They knew it was bad the whole time and they just tune out. And finally, they're just like, we need to report this. This has been horrific. There are about a handful of whistleblowers who have contacted us who just have such severe PTSD that they find it hard to function in life. They've stopped working at these facilities and now they feel like, okay, this is what they're giving back by calling us and giving us this information. The problem is that they don't give us their names, a lot of them.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have names because then we can actually move forward legally with an actual name of a witness.
All right, we're going to ask a few questions from some of the people here. Okay, this one's just a fun one. The favorite dog you've ever rescued? That's got to be hard.
I mean, I definitely am partial to my own dogs who I rescued or we rescued through Beagle Freedom Project. So it's hard to say. I mean, there have been thousands of dogs and there are many I had a really strong personal connection with. There was this one really, really old dog named Ebby. He's since passed away. He was already really old when we rescued him, and he was at a facility in San Diego, California. And he came to us emaciated. I think he was at the time even like 9 or 10 years old. He had Cushing's disease. He had all kinds of things going on with him. And so I kept him with me for a long time, taking care of him, literally syringe feeding him to get his hydration up, to get some weight on him. And I just formed such a special bond with him. I felt his pain. I could feel his pain, and we would cuddle at night and I would sing him songs. I always had a lot of different animals in the house, that from not just from laboratories, but rescues from a local shelter as well. And I remember during the time that I had him with me, we did adopt him out, but during the time I had him with me, we had rescued some little puppies. And he just loved these puppies and took them on as his own. And it was the sweetest thing I've ever seen. I still have those pictures.
I guess you must end up with a lot of them coming home for at least a little bit. It's got to be hard too, then, to let them go. Do you see some of them later, like with their families? And it's got to be awesome. Yeah.
We keep in touch, try to keep in touch with everybody. And we also have a secret closed Facebook group for all of our fosters and adopters. And so we have like thousands of people on there now. It's amazing. And they all share constantly.
Oh.
It is going all day with breakthroughs and photos and trips they took. And so many of our people also have created their own Facebook and Instagram accounts for their rescued dogs and cats. And so I can keep track of them that way too. It's really fun.
Amazing. Okay, that's good for this next question. What do I do if I want to foster or adopt a Beagle Freedom Project animal?
Great question. We love that. Just go to our website and there's a tab at the top called Rescue or Adopt and fill out the form. I would suggest filling out the form to foster because we always do fostering first, right? And then of course, if you then want to adopt, then that's very easy to do. And so not all of our animals are also on our website. Some of them are confidential, and so they're not all there. So you don't have to apply for a specific animal. You can just apply and say, here's maybe the preferred male or female, just depending on who's in your household or whatever. And someone from our team will get back to you. And of course, it all just depends too if we have a rescue in your area. So right now we're expecting some rescues to land in California. And then of course we have more in Oklahoma.
Okay. And why is it they foster first?
Yeah, I made that a requirement because of the damage that they've been through. Even though we explain it to people and they go through the process and it's also on our website, it's reading about their trauma is one thing and how to work with them and rehabilitate them. But having that animal in your home is entirely different. And we want people to really realize with some of them, what it takes, because a lot of these dogs are so traumatized. Like, you make a sound and they bolt, scared, they're shaking. It's hard for them to assimilate at first. There are so many things that you have to work through with them, and especially the potty issue. I'm just going to say it, very hard to train them on the potty issue. And so we really want people to foster first. That way we are totally involved. We're possibly the only advocacy and rescue organization I know that has a 24-hour cell phone hotline. Our team is on the phone with people constantly, helping them through this. And then we take care of their needs, their vet care and everything else too, while they're in foster. And so we take care of the bulk of the medical until when they adopt them.
That actually makes a ton of sense. I think it's a lot for some people to get into, and it just takes the right match too, I would imagine. And I didn't even think about the whole bathroom issue with they've been in cages their whole lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And, our fosters are amazing, and just bless them. But, for some people, it's just a little bit too hard, and that's okay. And they'll keep them until they're adopted, until we find it, a perfect home for them to be adopted into. And then some people fall in love and they keep them. So
I love it. Okay, everybody. So it's bfp.org. If you want to donate, if you want to foster, if you want to learn more, and if you want to get in this fight against animal testing, and everybody here and all your friends should. Shannon, thank you. This was fantastic. It was
Thank
great.
you so much. Thank you.
To learn more about Shannon, the Beagle Freedom Project, and about Freedom Fields, go to our website, speciesunite.com. We will have links to everything. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Species Unite. If you have a spare moment and could do us a favor, please subscribe, rate, review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps people find the show. I would like to thank everyone at Species Unite, including Gary Knudsen, Amy Jones, Paul Healy, Santina Polke-Link, Sam Kosel, Ciara Dolan, and Anna Kallner, who wrote and performed today's music. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.